Today I'll be starting with the developmental disorders of bone and cartilage. So what do we mean by the developmental disorders? So there can be defects in the nuclear protein and the transcription factor. There can be some defects in the nuclear protein and transcription factors of bone forming processes or bone resorption processes. There can be any defects in hormone and signal transduction proteins. There can either be defects in the extracellular structural proteins, like we discussed about this thing, the type 1 collagen. The type 1 collagen, it was secreted by the osteoblast cells. So there can be some problem in this collagen. And we can also have some defects in the metabolic pathways, which include the enzymes, the ion channels, and the transporters. Some defect in these. So the different defects will lead to different kinds of clinical manifestation and different kinds of diseases. So let's discuss about what happens when there are defects in nuclear proteins and transcription factors. So there are two main diseases that we have to discuss here. First is brachydactyly. So brachydactyly, it actually means there are different types of brachydactyly. It is actually a diastosis, not a dysplasia. It means the lesion, the problem is actually localized. It is localized to one or two bones rather than being a generalized problem which will involve all bones of the body. So typically the bones of the phalanges and the tarsals are involved, and what the brachydactyly that we have to study is the D and E type. So it is easy to see in the D type what is the problem. We have a shortening of the terminal phalanx of the thumb and or the big toe. This is what happens in the D type. There's a shortening of the terminal phalanx. And in the E type, you can see all of the phalanges of the hands are involved. So which gene is actually the cause of this? There is a homeobox gene which is known as HOX D13. Due to mutations in this gene, it leads to brachydactyly types D and E. Now the second disease, this was one of the first diseases that we ever studied in MBBS in the chapter of clavicle in anatomy, in osteology. This is known as cleidocranial dysplasia. So a typical patient of cleidocranial dysplasia does not have normal clavicles. That's why he shows this kind of a position, this kind of a posture. Also, typically they have a supernumerative dentation. It means the teeth are not normal. The teeth are haphazardly arranged, and it can also be increase in the number of teeth, and the teeth can be one over the other, or it can be decreased in some area, or it can be increased in some areas. So what is the problem in this? We have discussed about the RUNX2 gene. We discussed about genes like SOX9, and this is the gene which is known as RUNX2. So when RUNX2 has a loss of function mutation, it will lead to cleidocranial dysplasia. So the patient will have patent fontanelles, delayed closure of cranial sutures, Vormanian bones. What do Vormanian bones mean? These are actually extra bones without cranial suture, and they will have delayed eruption of the secondary teeth. So they can have a haphazard arrangement of teeth in the future. Obviously, they will have primitive clavicles, and they will be of short height. They will have primitive clavicles. So the thing to remember here is primitive clavicles and Vormanian bones and delayed eruption of secondary teeth. The other things are not to be memorized. So what are the problems if there are defects in hormones and signal transduction proteins? So it is very easy to understand if there is a defect in the hormone, like the hormones we have discussed. For example, the main one being the growth hormone. What problems can it lead? First is achondroplasia. So what it is actually the most common skeletal dysplasia global. Global means that it will involve all parts of the body. That's what the terminology of dysplasia in the chapter of bone pathology means. It's not a pre-malignant lesion definition that we give it to in the chapter of neoplasia. Actually, dysplasia word in bone pathology means that all the bones of the body are being affected. Diastosis means a local group of bones is only being affected, like what we have seen in brachydactyly types D and E. So Achondroplasia is a skeletal dysplasia, and it is the most common skeletal dysplasia, and it is a major cause of dwarfism. So, what is the problem here? There is a gain of function mutation in the FGF3 receptor. So, we have discussed earlier that FGF3 receptor actually leads to inhibition of osteoblast proliferation. So, if there is a gain of function mutation, this receptor will be stimulated for chronic periods, and it will lead to increased inhibition of endochondrial growth, which will basically affect the long bones. We have discussed that the flat bones are usually made by the intermembranous ossification. But if the if as only the endochondrial growth is affected, only the long bones will be affected of the person. So the person will have a normal head due to a normal cranium and normal sternum and normal ribs. So the trunk of the person will be somewhat normal, and the head of the person will be relatively larger, but it is actually normal to what it should have been supposed to. But the extremities of the person will be very short, and therefore the person will be a dwarf. So it is in most cases autosomal dominant, results in retarded cartilage growth, and because there is retarded cartilage growth, there will be no endochondrial growth properly, and there will be retardation of growth of the long bones. But the thing to memorize here is that there is no change in the longevity of the person. The person will live a normal life. He will not be mentally retarded like a cretin. Cretin is a dwarf who is mentally retarded also, and the reproductive status of the person will not be affected. So some of the classical features of a person with achondroplasia is there will be bulging of the frontal part of the skull, and there will be a classical depression of the root of the nose, and the characteristic feature is trident hands. So what are trident hands? When the person outspreads the hands, it will show some trident hands with a short finger held in three groups. So these make a classical image of a trident. So yeah. So the next disease is thanatotropic dysplasia, and by the word of thanato, you can understand that it is a very lethal disease. Thanos means death. So thanatotropic dysplasia is the most common form of dwarfism. It happens in 1 to 20,000 of live births, and the same problem occurs here, but in a very different form. The FGFR3 receptor is only affected, but it is something different from the achondroplasia. There will be micromelic shortening of limbs, and there will be relative macrocephaly. There will be frontal bossing and small chest cavity. Because of this small chest cavity, the small chest cavity, what will happen that your lungs will not be able to expand properly. It will lead to respiratory insufficiency, which will eventually lead to death of the person. The person dies either intrauterine or just 1 to 2 weeks after birth, and there will also be a characteristic bell-shaped abdomen. So this is what thanatotropic dysplasia looks like. These images, you can appreciate the bossing. So there can also, due to the hormones, there can also be abnormal bone densities present. And what are the two types of abnormal bone densities we can have? Either we can have less bone mass density, or we can have more bone mass density. So less bone mass density is actually known as osteoporosis. But when we are dealing with this effect, the defects in hormone and signal transduction, this osteoporosis is actually associated with a pseudoganglioma syndrome. This is not the osteoporosis which we typically have due to hyperparathyroidism. This is a very characteristic osteoporosis which is in association with pseudoganglioma syndrome. And what receptor is affected here? The LRP5 receptor is affected here. So it is easier to understand. We have discussed earlier that the LRP5 is responsible for what? It is responsible for the WNT LRP5 beta catenin signaling pathway. So it is responsible for the osteoblastic activity. So there has to be an LRP5 mutation which leads to loss of function. So that the osteoblasts are not activated properly, which will lead to osteoporosis in the future. So the person will obviously have skeletal fragility, and there will also be loss of vision. What is osteopetrosis? Osteopetrosis is actually thickening of the bone, thickening of the bone. But the catch point here is the bone becomes thickened, but it's very fragile. It's like a chalk, so it will break very easily. It's very brittle. So there are two types of osteopetrosis that we discuss here. One is the autosomal dominant variant, which occurs in adults. Here also we have LRP5, but it is actually a gain of mutation, gain of function mutation. It will lead to increased bone density. We will have hearing loss and skeletal fragility. So skeletal fragility will occur in both osteoporosis and osteopetrosis. If you have less bone density, you will obviously not be able to have all the load of the body weight. And in cases of osteopetrosis, though your bone mass density has increased, but still it will be very brittle, because the tension of the bone is because of its characteristic shape at the shaft, which is very much diffused in this case of osteopetrosis. And there is there's an infantile type also, where the mutation is in rank L. So it is easy to understand the rank L mutation will also be a loss of function mutation. Rank L mutation will be a loss of function mutation, because rank L and rank association actually increases what? The osteoclastic activity. So rank L loss of function mutation will lead to less osteoclastic activity, which will lead to increased bone density. So revising once more. So first we revised about brachiodactyly types D and E. We revised about cleidocranial dysplasia. Then we discussed about achondroplasia, and we discussed about the lethal form of dwarfism, which is a thanatotropic. And we also discussed about some of the abnormal bone defects, which include porosis and petrosis. So the problems were actually in the nuclear proteins and the transcription factors, or the hormones and the signal transduction proteins. So now coming to the next topic, we can have defects in the extracellular structural proteins also. So what are the extracellular structural proteins that we discussed earlier? If you remember, the proteins that are derived from osteoblast, typically most of it is actually type 1 collagen. So the matrix is actually made up of type 1 collagen, the osteoid part, the organic part. So first we can have a type 1 collagen disease. So we can have a type 1 collagen disease, and the name of this disease is osteogenesis imperfecta. It is easy to appreciate that we find type 4 collagen in the kidneys, and type 1 collagen is present in the bones. So please remember by the word bone. Bone contains 1. 1 means type 1 collagen. It is very important to understand that bone, please remember the word bone contains 1, so it contains type 1 collagen. Just a thing to remember which type of collagen it contains. So type 1 collagen disease, the disease we have is osteogenesis imperfecta. So there is imperfect formation of bones in the body. This is also known as a brittle bone disease, and it is in most conditions also autosomal dominant. Okay, so what will happen? There's a deficiency of the synthesis of type 1 collagen, and it is the most common inherited diseases of connective tissue. This is very important. This came in NEET. It is the most common inherited disorder of connective tissue. So what we have discussed till now, it is known as a brittle bone disease. It is autosomal dominant. There is a deficient synthesis of type 1 collagen, and it is the most common inherited disorder of connective tissue. So other options that were given, which were this was a little bit tricky question, because Marfan syndrome were also given. So most of the people have heard about the disease Marfan syndrome. So they usually mark that, but this is a factual question. It is the most common inherited disorder of connective tissue. So, what are the areas where typical clinical manifestations are actually seen? The type 1 collagen is present mostly in the bones and the joints, but some of it is also present in the eyes, the teeth, and the skin. So, a patient will present to you with manifestations mostly in the bones. He will have a lot of pain in the joints and the bones, and in the eyes there is a characteristic when you view the eyes in the sunlight, you will see this a blue sclera, sclera. This is very typical of osteogenesis imperfecta. So bones, joint, eyes, teeth, and skin. So I'll tell you about the clinical manifestations later. So what happens? This is an autosomal disease. There will be problems in the type 1 chains, type 1, alpha 1 and alpha 2 chains of type 1 collagen. There will be problem in the alpha 1 and alpha 2 chains of type 1 collagen. Usually usually in most cases there is glycine replacement, and this will lead to defective assembly of high order collagen polypeptides. This will lead to defective assembly of high order collagen polypeptides. So very hi-fi word, but we have to remember this for the prof exams. So this actually means that there will be an imperfect formation of a triple helix. Type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Actually type 1 and type 4, these form a triple helical structure which has different kinds of chains. So in type 1 collagen there is a triple helix formation also, which is required for collagen synthesis and extracellular transport of collagen. So if the chains are not properly formed, there's a problem in the alpha 1 and alpha 2. It will lead to an imperfect triple helix which will affect both collagen synthesis and extracellular transport. So there are actually four types of osteogenesis imperfecta. The first, third, and the fourth are compatible with life. It means that the person will survive. He or she may not die because of this condition, but obviously the longevity will be slightly reduced and the quality of life will not be appropriate, because the person will face multiple pathological fractures during his or her life. So what happens in the type 1? There is decreased synthesis of pro alpha 1 chain, or there is an abnormal pro alpha 1 or alpha 2. It is an autosomal dominant condition, and these are the major clinical features. So most of the patients will actually come to you with 1 or 3, with type 1 or type 3 of osteogenesis imperfecta in clear clinical practice. So in type 1, the first thing is that he or she will suffer from postnatal fractures, because it is known as a brittle bone disease. The bones will not be very strong. Characteristically, he will have a blue sclera. He or she will have a blue sclera. The stature of the person will be normal. Sorry. There will be skeletal fragility, and there will be dentogenesis imperfecta. What does this mean? The dentine, it also contains a collagen type 4. So the dentine of the teeth will not be formed properly. It will lead to bluish, yellowish discoloration of the teeth. This is known as dentogenesis imperfecta. There be a hearing impairment, which will be actually sensineural. Plus due to conduction, it will be sensineural hearing defect. Plus, as there are bones present in the inner ear, the inner ear bones will also be not formed properly. So it will lead to both conduction defects, and it will be sensineural also. So sensineural plus conduction defects is the hearing impairment, which is classically seen in the case of osteogenesis imperfecta. There will be joint laxity, and there will be blue sclera. So blue sclera is the characteristic feature of a person with osteogenesis imperfecta. What happens in type 2? There is an abnormal short pro alpha 1 chain. So the word here is short, and obviously there is an unstable triple helix. You can just memorize this, what happens in type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. The features of 1, 3 and 4 are somewhat similar, and these have a decent progresses. So type 1 is compatible with survival, but the thing to remember here is that the type 3-1 patient is will actually present to you with osteogenesis imperfecta in adult life. So it will be a progressive and a deforming disease. So you have to try to treat this patient. And type 4 is also compatible with survival. What happens in type 2? It is the lethal form of the osteogenesis imperfecta. So patient usually dies in utero within few days of birth. It is mostly autosomal recessive. So you can see here that in most cases it is autosomal dominant, but in this case it is autosomal recessive, and there is death in utero or within some days. The patient will also have blue sclera, but you will not be able to appreciate other features like dentogenesis imperfecta, hearing impairment, because the patient will not be able to survive even that long. So the only two features that you will be able to see are skeletal deformities and the blue sclera, and there is prenatal lethality. So what are the main clinical manifestations that you have to remember? First is there are brittle bones. There are brittle bones. There is too little bone. It means the bones are not appropriately dense. It will lead to multiple pathological fractures in the future. You can appreciate here that the bone should have been this because of a brittle bone, the width of the bone has also decreased, and there is also, due to mechanical load on the bone, there is also a characteristic bowing also seen. Also there is a presence of a blue sclera, which is actually translucent, and we can also because of this translucency we can appreciate the underlying choroid in some cases. And the person will have blue yellow teeth due to deficiency of dentine, and hearing loss, which we have already discussed. It's sensorineural, plus there are other conduction defects also. There is another type of disease which has problems in the type 2, type 9, type 10, type 11 collagen, but it's not very important, so we'll not discuss it. So there can be now defects in the metabolic pathways also, which involve the different enzymes, the ion channel, and the transporters. So here we'll discuss about osteopetrosis. We discussed about osteopetrosis in the second type of diseases, which involve the signal transduction proteins. But here we'll discuss mainly it under the metabolic pathways. So what is osteopetrosis? It is also known as this is a keyword, the marble bone disease. The marble, it's hard, like it appears to be hard like marble, but it's very the bone is very brittle. There's also a characteristic name given to this disease. It's known as the Albert-Schonberg disease. So what happens in this disease? In osteopetrosis there is reduced bone resorption and diffuse systemic sclerosis due to impaired function or formation of osteoclasts. Easy to understand, if your osteoclasts are not working properly, so bone resorption will not take properly, and it will lead to diffuse systemic sclerosis in the future. Diffuse systemic sclerosis in the future due to abnormal functioning of the osteoblasts. So there will be a diffuse systemic skeletal sclerosis in the future due to reduced function or formation of osteoclasts. So the two keywords here are reduced bone resorption and diffuse systemic skeletal sclerosis. There will be a characteristic stone-like appearance, but very easily fractured. So it is actually a chalk-like bone. So chalk appears to be very thick, and it appears to be very hard, but it is easily broken. So this is what something happens in this disease also. So in osteopetrosis we have a characteristic chalk-like bone. So what is the pathogenesis? The pathogenesis is very interesting because it affects what is known as the carbonic anhydrous 2. So it is easy to understand that carbonic anhydrous is also present in the proximal convoluted tubule of the kidney. So what does proximal convoluted tubule have? What is the main function of the PCT? So PCT actually helps in H plus. It actually helps in acidification of urine. So if the PCT is not working properly due to an inefficient carbonic anhydrous pump, so what will happen? Your enzyme So what will happen? Your H plus will be like contained in your body, and which will lead to renal tubular acidosis. Which will lead to renal tubular acidosis. The PCT has a function of acidification of urine. If your PCT is not working properly due to an ineffective carbonic anhydrase enzyme, this will lead to renal tubular acidosis because it will decrease H plus in what? The urine. In the urine. Similarly, we have carbonic anhydrase, also important in the functioning of osteoclasts. So we have discussed what osteoclasts do. They form a resorption pit. So in the resorption pit, they actually secrete the metalloproteinases, which helps in resorption of the bone, which secretes all the calcium and the phosphates. But before that, the osteoclasts need to make the environment acidified. They have to make an acidic environment so that calcium can easily be secreted out. In an acidic environment, calcium always secretes out of the bone, and in an alkaline environment, calcium always deposits into the bone. So that's why it's easy to understand that alkaline phosphatase, why is it required in bone formation? Because it provides an alkaline medium, and acidic medium is required for bone breaking. So osteoclasts required H plus, but if H plus decreases, there will be less acidification of the resorption pit, and it will lead to less dissolution of the hydroxyapatite. That is, less resorption of calcium and phosphate will take place. So what is the characteristic morphology of this disease? Due to decreased osteoclast activity, we have earlier discussed in the development of bone that osteoclasts are required for the medullary cavity formation. So there will be no medullary cavity formation, and we know that in the medullary cavity we have the hematopoietic stem cells also. We have the hematopoietic stem cells in the cortex also, but in most cases we have a lot of hematopoietic stem cells in the bone marrow also, in the medullary cavity also. So if there is no medullary cavity, there will be less hematopoiesis, which will lead to pancytopenia. Actually, it will lead to anemia and leukopenia. So due to anemia and leukopenia, there will be recurrent infections and evident hepatosplenomegaly. So due to and also there will be the primary spongiosa of the person will persist, because we have discussed in the development of bone. So what happens, the primary spongiosa in normal conditions, bone formation takes place over this, and it is actually just a remnant part of the cartilage. But as the osteoclast is not working properly, there is no differential bone deposition on this primary spongiosa, which actually leaves no room for the marrow. The primary spongiosa actually persists, and it increases in size due to less osteoclastic activity, and it leaves no room for the marrow, which will lead to poor modeling, and which will actually lead to mostly woven bone in the person. And we have already discussed that lamellar bones are stronger than woven bones. So if the person will have woven bone structure in his or her long bones, so obviously it will be brittle. Also, due to decreased osteoclast activity, the neural foramina is very small, so the nerves will get compressed, and it will lead to pain. Okay, so there is one characteristic thing that you have to remember here, that the ends of the long bones are bulbous. This is known as the Erlenmeyer-Flass deformity. This is characteristically appreciated on the radiological examination. At the ends, you can see that you can see that there is a bulbous formation of the epicondyles. This is known as the Erlenmeyer-Flass deformity. And the hematopoietic stem cell transplantation was the first. The hematopoietic stem cell transplantation for pharmaceutical this technique, the hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, was first successfully done for osteopetrosis only. This is a fact, and this can come as an MCQ. Okay, so what are the clinical features? There will be the patient will come with this triad in infancy. The patient will show fractures. He or she may have anemia and hydrocephaly in an infant, and the prognosis is poor. But as the age progresses, if he or she survives, there will be cranial nerve defects due to a small neural foramina, and there will be recurrent infections due to pancytopenia, and there will be massive hepatosplenomegaly. Okay, so I'll just show you some images. This is the healthy bone thickness and density, and this is the increased bone thickness. You can easily appreciate the Erlenmeyer-Fast deformity here. You can appreciate the Erlenmeyer-Fast deformity here, and this is the you can see the section of the proximal tibial diaphysis from a fetus with osteopetrosis. The cortex will be present, but the medullary cavity is filled with primary spongiosa. You can see the amount of primary spongiosa that is here. So there is no way that the bone marrow can be made properly here. So it will lead to replacement of hematopoietic elements. So that's all concerning with the developmental deformities.